No, no, no! Hello everyone, and welcome. Today is the start of something new for this channel. Today is going to be the first video in a series where we explore what it might be like if a popular character from another video game universe were to come to Skyrim. Many parts of Skyrim are cold and harsh places to live. There are also many locations throughout the land of Skyrim where the dead walk the earth. For these reasons, plus me thinking that it would just be plain awesome, are the reasons why I've decided to bring Arthas, the Lich King from the world of Warcraft, into the world of Skyrim. Together, we will find out what it might be like if Arthas were to be relocated to Skyrim. I'm really excited to see how this story plays out, and if you like this sort of thing, there's a subscribe button around here somewhere. Being that this is the first episode in this series, let's go over some of the details that you're going to need to know. First, I'm taking some creative liberty and choosing not to pick a specific time when this is taking place in the WoW universe. My Arthas is just Arthas, the Lich King that ruled over from Icecrown Citadel, but now he doesn't have any of his cool stuff. Next, I am just fresh off of downgrading my Skyrim version all the way down to 1.5.97. The latest update from Bethesda broke my Lord Order, and this downgrade needed to happen. While I'm grateful that I'm still able to play the game, my Skyrim is not without flaws. I crash a lot. Come on, game, we're about to do something cool. You will notice I have a crash timer that I have during my live streams. My load order, like any Skyrim modder will say, is a work in progress. Speaking of mods, a link to my load order will be in the description below. I wanted to give an obvious, but a special shout out to the mod Resplendent Lich King Armor by Karasa25. Obviously, this whole story couldn't be happening if it weren't for this mod, and the models for the armor and for Frostmourne, they're incredible. Another note on mods. Midway through this playthrough, I switched back to ENB lighting as I can't seem to stand looking at the game without it. Last note on mods is that I have installed several mods that add certain enemies to the game, which make the world of Skyrim much more dangerous. Add the fact that we were playing on Legendary difficulty, in survival mode, and we have ourselves a very, very dangerous Skyrim. I die a lot.
Goodbye.
As for our character build and what skills we will be using, to recreate the Lich King in Skyrim, we will have to put a heavy focus on conjuration magic to summon up our undead friends. One-handed weaponry so that we can have, one day, the power of Frostmourne in our hands. Heavy armor to rock the Lich King armor. Destruction magic so the Lich King can utilize his fancy frost spells. And finally, smithing so we can craft that Lich King armor, the Helm of Domination, and like I mentioned, the mighty Frostmourne. These aren't hard and fast rules that I'm adhering to here, as I will utilize other skills such as speechcraft and restoration. Yes, this was a long intro, but it's over now. Now we can see what the story of Arthas might have been like if we were randomly dropped in Skyrim, having lost all of his gear and left with no idea where to go or what to do. First thing you'll notice is that I am not doing the typical carriage ride into Helgen. I'm using a mod called Random Alternate Start Reborn. I call it Rasser. It skips the Helgen intro and drops you randomly in Skyrim with a set of basic gear and skills of your choosing. I chose to be a spell sword, and Rasser decided to spit me out inside of the Broken Ore Grotto. There were literally some bandits nearby, so I had to get out of there right away. Upon leaving, I toggled on everyone's favorite survival mode, and was then tasked with choosing a deity to worship. I chose Arcade because he was being touted as the Lord of Life and God of Funerals. This made sense to me at the time, being the Lich King and all. A fire was nearby, so I of course got distracted by the bright shiny light and headed over. We checked out some of the barrels and were conveniently stashed here with some apples, so we snagged those up, warmed up a bit, and then head off to figure out where Arthas fits in this new land of Skyrim that he finds himself in. For those of you who know nothing at all about the Lich King from World of Warcraft, Arthas Menethil was a righteous paladin turned evil. the dude just one day went cold, ended up letting an entire town die. He even became such a baddie that he killed his own dad. Arthas was kind of a douche, honestly. He ends up getting what was due to him and dies. His ghost dad comes back and tells him that no king rules forever, and everyone is supposed to be all sad that Arthas, the douche king, is now dead. But you know what? Arthas is in Skyrim, and in Skyrim, he's our douche. After doing his first bit of exploring, Arthas, funnily, found his way into the alternate entrance for Solitude. I think this is the hidden entrance for the Dark Brotherhood quest to kill Misvici. I'm not sure, though. In the distance, Arthas can hear the familiar sounds of a beheading. We promptly head over to listen to this proud Nord speak his final words of glory before losing his head to the axe. Nothing beats the aftermath of a good beheading, but Arthas is tired, and Arthas is hungry. So we head over to the Winking Skeever to crash after selling some of the extra gear that we got to this local smith. After a long night's rest, Arthas finds himself a bit lost. Luckily, there are some things Arthas can do to find his way, and as well as power up here in Skyrim. We grab a quick quest to deliver something to Windhelm. Windhelm seems like a place that a Lich King might enjoy being, so off we head. Me, Swurv, the narrator, I have always hated mud crabs in all my playthroughs, so I found it fitting that Arthas' first real encounter was with mud crabs. It felt good to find an easy victory in the beginning of this playthrough, as things were certainly going to be getting much more difficult for Arthas. Also, the mod swearing mud crabs is amazing. As I had mentioned earlier, I have some mods that are bringing new enemies to Skyrim installed, and Arthas runs into some of these new enemies just down the road, and we have our first set of difficult struggles to overcome as a burgeoning Skyriminal Lich King. Arthas finds himself needing to overcome a scuffle between some revelers and some Reeklings who lost their way into Skyrim. After a series of brutal deaths, Arthas learns what to do to win the day against these foes, and then we run into more struggles as we continue on to Windhelm. Arthas is starting to realize that he may have been the almighty Lich King when he was over in Northrend there, but the dangers of Skyrim can be great, and he would need to be a smart Lich King if he wants to survive here in Skyrim. After a long trek through the snow, the winds of Skyrim begin to weigh heavy on Arthas. In the distance, he sees a structure that looks lived in, and realizes that this might be his only chance to survive. With survival mode draining all of his max HP almost down to nothing, Arthas approaches and is met with a very non-friendly Silverhand guy. But nearly frozen to death, Arthas realizes that it's now or never. Arthas makes a mad dash to get inside the building. Thanks to the beauty of decade-old video game design, that very non-friendly Silverhand decides to politely wait outside while we defrost near the fire inside of the building. After fighting off the frostbite and having a snack, it's time to stop running in fear. Our enemy is outside. We will have to go through him, and it's now or never, Arthas. Now is the time for glory, for Lordaeron! Boldly and bravely, Arthas faces this extremely polite enemy and wins the day. Quickly, Arthas rifles through the remains of his body, finding some sunglasses. Yeah, my load order is pretty sweet. But also we get our hands on a weapon upgrade in this silver sword. It might not be Frostmourne, but it's better than the Iron Sword. The fight with the cold isn't over yet for Arthas. More trudging through the snow leaves us once again just about dead to frostbite, but Arthas manages to get lucky again by finding his way to the Nightgate Inn. Arthas accepts this fine twist of fate and stops here to rest and restock on food. Awakening the next day feeling refreshed and ready, Arthas heads out on the path to Windhelm. After chatting with a few of those weirdo Vigilance of Stendarr people, a thief bumps into Arthas. Normally, Arthas would be pretty pissed about this, but this is Skyrim survival mode, and that thief wasn't in heavy armor, so I just plain old wasn't catching up to him. Karma played a role as Thiefy Boy here met with some wolves just up the road and got what was coming to him. Nobody rudely bumps into Arthas, the Lich King, and doesn't pay for it with their life. Making our way into Windhelm, Arthas finds Jorah and delivers the letter. Immediately after handing the letter over, Arthas is able to hear the faint whisper on the frozen winds coming through the town of Windhelm. It's a familiar whisper, a whisper of necromancy. I'm not sure if all you folks watching remember this, but Arthas is the Lich King, and necromancy Kind of his thing. Listening closer, Arthas is able to determine that the whisper is coming from Mara's Pond, which is just southwest of Windhelm. Unable to ignore this call, Arthas heads out to Mara's Pond to see what this is all about. Upon approach, Arthas finds himself faced with an enemy that is made up of almost pure, unadulterated evil. This enemy stands directly in the way of the entrance to where this necromantic calling is coming from. We have to get through him. This enemy is none other than a humanoid mudcrab that is capable of summoning more regular mudcrabs, but is also armed with a lightning spell that never seems to miss and one-shots everything, and oh my god, I hate mudcrabs. Crap, what the heck is that? No! This guy? No, he did! Surrounded by mudcrabs. Realizing that we weren't able to brute force our way to our goal, we head out to a nearby location to search for anything nearby or anyone nearby that may be able to willingly or even unwillingly help us to kill this evil little lightning douche crab that is blocking our path to victory. We head over to Gallows Rock to find some Silverhand who ended up not wanting to fight with us, but instead wanted to get their butts handed to them by these ancient Spriggan giants who turned out to not only hate those Silverhand guys, they also hated Arthas. And they didn't just hate the Silverhand guys and Arthas, they also hated evil lightning mud jerks too. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? This couldn't be more true. Luring these crazy Spriggan monsters back to the lake was a good plan. They squashed that little lightning bug, leaving the entrance to Gallows Hall finally exposed. Arthas enters, and is met with the familiar smell of death and decay that he remembers and loves. Gallows Hall is a player home that is geared towards necromancy. In order to fully unlock it as a player home, you have to solve a series of puzzles that took me way longer than I'd like to admit. In the end, it was worth it to have a base of operations that was worthy of the Lich King. Arthas is rewarded with a staff that can resurrect certain dead bodies. This is really huge for our future survival in Skyrim. Having some cannon fodder around will be great. It's also a good feeling to be working on our conjuration skill as well, as Arthas found some spell tomes inside Gallows Hall that will teach us to summon a few varieties of ghosts and skeletons. Skeletons overall are weak and fragile. Ours wields a bow, and we nicknamed him Bonesy. Bonesy can be a big help, but the thing about him is that when you're walking from place to place in Skyrim, the sound of Bonesy's bones creaking becomes similar to the sound of squeaky windshield wipers. You can't stand the sound of them, but you'd be screwed if you didn't have them. Okay, so this is good. This is great. Now Arthas is much more established with his own place to call home in Skyrim. Now it was time to figure out what he was going to be doing to spread his Lich Kingliness all over the land. Deciding that it would be wise to try to make some friends with his neighbors, Arthas heads back over to Windhelm to see what he can do there. After re-entering the familiar city, Arthas finds himself being asked to help solve a murder. Murder and dead bodies are two of Arthas' very favorite things, so he decides to help. But he does this his own way. After questioning some of the witnesses, Arthas needs to head into Windhelm Keep to speak more about these murders with the steward. Figuring the best way to solve a murder would be to actually just talk to the victim. Arthas, being the Lich King, breathes some undeath into the body of Susanna the Wicked. Susanna is very helpful in solving her own murder. Soon after, Woundfirth is apprehended and all is well in Windhelm once again. With Windhelm now safe from Woundfirth, and Arthas being paid some cash money for his deeds, he decides to reward himself by buying a horse from the local Windhelm stables. We decide the price to be fair and purchase the steed. Thrilled with the prospect of now traveling Skyrim in style, we jump on and begin to ride off into And then the game crashed. Arthas has got a horse. Arthas is frozen. The game has crashed. Dang it! Ugh! Loading back up, we repurchase the horse and head back home to Gallows Hall to unload some loot, do the typical Skyrim survival mode stuff, and get some well-deserved rest. This rest, however, came with a dream for Arthas. When I say a dream, I mean more like a nightmare. For in Arthas' dream, he was informed about a mysterious entity in Skyrim known as the Pale Lady. Thinking to himself, no, it couldn't be. The Pale Lady sounds an awful lot like a banshee. And a banshee could only mean one thing. Sylvanas had also somehow found her way into Skyrim, and Arthas is going to have to kill her for that. After learning to tap into some new necromancy powers to summon a power ghost, Arthas began making his way to Frostmere Crypt, the place where this pale lady was said to be hiding. Before Arthas could face off against his most hated of rivals, he would need to get through some bandits that had come to occupy the crypt. This undying ghost that he got proved to be a useful ally, as it became a staple in many of Arthas' victories throughout the remainder of this chapter. With his ghostly friend by his side, Arthas cut his way through this dungeon and on to finally face the Pale Lady. We find our way into the inner chamber of the dungeon. Inside, we've run into somebody named Kier. He's coughing and whatever, and I can't really understand anything he's saying. Something about a cat named Roger or something, and something about a sword. Sounded like Kier was dying with some unfinished business, and die Kier did. Arthas, being the benevolent Lich King that he is, grants Kier the gift of revenge. The staff makes for some pretty interesting encounters sometimes, as Kier was looking to find Roger and tell him he didn't like him or something. Moving forward into the main chamber, we see Roger, and our vision it's a bit blurry. Is that Sylvanas with him? Looks like she just killed Roger. The newly revived Kier and I step forward to go right after this pale lady. Kier goes in, but he actually goes down like a sack of crap, and the Sylvanas wannabe is suddenly surrounded by wisps, who swarm to me to take me out soon after. After reloading back in, it becomes obvious to Arthas that Kier is not going to hack it, and we needed our ghostly buddy to come back and help us deal with Sylvanas. I send him in there to distract her. After he takes down these annoying wisps, Arthas meets up with his ectoplasmic buddy to take on this bogus banshee together. Now that we're up close and personal with this apparition, it is clearly not Sylvanas as Arthas knew her. Sylvanas must still be on Azeroth. This was a cathartic moment, but the epiphany was short-lived as this pale lady, she was still here, and we still had to deal with her. Although this wasn't the epic battle with Sylvanas that we wanted to be, Arthas still went in there, and he still landed several clean blows, and this caused the Pale Lady to try one last trick by splitting into 3 different versions. Arthas was a bit stupid about it and dealt with just one of the shades, but our ghostly pal, he wasn't fooled, ending the Pale Lady's time in Tamriel with just a few more swift blows. The Pale Lady was gone. Arthas, the Lich King, stood victorious in this dark dungeon, accompanied by his favorite ghostly ally. And that is going to be the end of Chapter 1 of Arthas' time here in Skyrim. If you made it this far into the story and found it enjoyable, there's a subscribe button within arm's reach. As always, this video was done in full collaboration with the TRX Army. Check the description for a link to their Discord as well as to my socials. Cheers to you all for continuing to frequent this channel. Catch you all in Chapter 2. Goodbye for now.